She was a poor widow, broken, forgotten, and left with nothing but her two daughters. The day her loving husband died, her world collapsed, and the very family she trusted stripped her of everything he ever worked for. But instead of giving up, she rose. She fought. She sacrificed. She sold her only home just to send her daughters to the university. And what those girls later did for her will leave you in tears. Before we begin, please like, comment, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our emotional stories filled with lessons, hope, and redemption. Let's dive in. Before sorrow found its way into her life like a thief in the night, Agnes Nwankwo lived inside a world built with love, laughter, and gentle peace. Her home was not wealthy, but it overflowed with warmth. The kind of warmth a kind husband brings into a woman's life. She often said she never knew the meaning of loneliness until she became a widow, because while her husband lived, he filled every corner of her heart. Chike Nwankwo was not just her husband, he was her friend, her protector, her confidant, and the pillar that held her world together. He was the type of man who would walk past the largest distractions just to rush home and hug his wife. A man whose smile could calm her storms, whose presence could silence her fears. Every moment with him was a blessing. Agnes never took for granted. They lived in a modest two-bedroom home, painted cream on the outside, with a rusted zinc roof that Chike always promised to change one day when business grows. Inside, however, the house felt like heaven, not because of luxury, but because of love. The sound of their twin daughters' laughter filled the rooms. The smell of Agnes's cooking welcomed Chike home every evening. Their nightly prayers echoed softly through the walls. Life wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful. Chike worked as a local mechanic, and though his income wasn't much, he provided with joy. He often returned home with small gifts, oranges for the girls, a wrapper for Agnes, sometimes even a new pot or plate. Because a queen must have fine things, he would say with a grin. He treated Agnes like treasure. Every morning he kissed her forehead before leaving for work. Every night he carried the twins on his shoulders, taking slow, playful walks around the compound. Every Sunday he ironed his shirt and held his family's hands in church proudly. To Agnes, this was paradise, not built from gold or wealth, but from love. But life, unpredictable and merciless, often waits until your heart is full before it strikes. The day everything changed. It was a rainy Tuesday, the kind of rain that fell like needles. Chike had left for work early, promising to return before dusk. Agnes made yam porridge for him, his favorite, and kept it warm, waiting for him like she always did. But evening came. Then night fell, and Chike did not return. At first, she thought the rain delayed him. Then she thought maybe a customer kept him long. But as the hours rolled by, fear crept into her chest like a whispering shadow. Neighbors noticed her pacing outside. "Agnes, go inside," Mama Ijima advised. "Rainy days are traffic days." But Agnes couldn't go in. She stood by the gate, peering into the darkness as if her gaze could pull her husband home. At exactly 9:47 p.m., she saw two policemen walking slowly toward her compound. Their faces were heavy, too heavy. And in that moment, her world began to crumble. "Madam, are you Mrs. Nwankwo?" one of them asked softly. Agnes's knees weakened. Yes, I'm his wife. Did something happen?" They exchanged a glance, one that tore her heart open. "Your husband, he had an accident." Her breath caught. "An accident? Is he hurt? Where is he? Take me to him." The second officer shook his head slowly. "Madam, we are sorry. He died on the spot." The ground beneath her felt like it disappeared. Her vision blurred. Her ears rang. "No! No!" She collapsed on the wet ground, screaming his name. Neighbors rushed out. Women held her. Men cursed under their breath. The twins, awakened by the noise, came running out in their tiny nightgowns. "Mummy, what is it? Where is Daddy?" Ada asked. Amara tugged her mother's wrapper. "Mummy, why are you crying?" Agnes gathered them in her arms and wailed, a sound so raw, so painful, that even the policemen wiped their eyes. Chike was gone. Her laughter was gone. Her peace was gone. Her life shattered into pieces she didn't know how to put together. It is often said that when a woman loses her husband, the world reveals its true face. For Agnes, It didn't take long. Before she could even recover from the shock of burying her husband, Chick's relatives descended on her home like vultures smelling fresh blood. At the funeral, his eldest brother, Okafor, didn't even cry. Instead, he was whispering to other men about property division and family land. 3 days after the burial, before Agnes could lift herself from the floor of mourning, they came with anger and entitlement. Okafor entered her house as though he owned it. "We have come to take what belongs to our brother," he announced loudly. Agnes wiped her swollen eyes. "What do you mean? Chike left everything for his children." Okafor hissed, "Children? Which children? Girls? Useless. How can girls inherit a man's property? In our tradition, women are nothing." The words stabbed her. "But I am his wife," she whispered. "You?" Another uncle laughed. "A woman! You don't count. This property belongs to our family. You only gave birth to daughters, so you have failed your husband." They pushed past her. They carried out the generator. They dragged away the deep freezer. They removed the television. They emptied the bedroom wardrobe. They took his tools, his documents, even his clothes. When Agnes tried to stop them, they shoved her aside roughly. "You cannot stop us," Okafor barked. "If Chicky had a son, you would have had respect, but you gave him girls. Girls! What use are they?" For the first time, Agnes wished she could scream at the heavens. Her daughter stood by the door, crying as strangers carried away everything their father worked for. By evening, the house was nearly empty, except for the walls, the memories, and the pain. When the uncles finally left, Okafor shouted from the gate, "We are leaving you with the house only because our brother bought it before marriage, but everything else belongs to us." Agnes sat on the bare floor that night, holding her daughters close, rocking them gently. "My babies, they took everything," she whispered in a trembling voice. Ada wiped her mother's tears. "Mummy, don't cry." Amara hugged her tightly. "We still have you, Mummy." In that moment, surrounded by emptiness, Agnes realized something. The world had taken her husband. It had taken their property. It had taken her peace. But it could not take her daughters. And for them, she would rise again. The beginning of suffering. Life became a battlefield. The house remained, but everything inside it was gone. She started washing clothes for people, selling firewood, hawking fruits under the sun. The twins learned early how to survive hunger, how to smile through pain, how to sleep on empty stomachs. But never, not once, did Agnes complain. Whenever the girls cried, she wiped their tears. "Don't worry, God has not forgotten us." Whenever she ate nothing so the girls could eat, she smiled. "A mother's stomach is strong. Eat, my angels." Whenever neighbors mocked her, she ignored them. Whenever her late husband's relatives passed by with pride, she held her children tighter. She suffered deeply, painfully, silently, but with purpose, because she knew the world had thrown her into fire. But she was determined to walk out of it with gold. Life did not give Agnes time to breathe. One moment she was a grieving widow sitting on a bare floor, and the next she was a warrior fighting every day for survival. Pain had carved itself into her heart, but responsibility pushed her forward like an unrelenting tide. Every morning before sunrise, Agnes tied her faded wrapper tightly around her waist, slipped her feet into worn rubber slippers, and carried an old basket on her head. She walked miles to the marketplace, ignoring the cold breeze that whipped her skin and the stones that bit into her bare feet. She was determined, because she had twin daughters who depended on her. She began selling fruits and vegetables, not because she loved the trade, but because it was the only thing she could start with little money. A neighbor, Mama Uche, pitied her and gave her a small loan to buy tomatoes and peppers. Agnes promised to pay it back, even though she didn't know how. Her days started before the cock crowed and ended long after the last orange sunset faded. She hawked from street to street, calling out, "Fresh tomatoes, oh sweet pepper, oh come and buy." Some days she made a small profit. Some days she returned with everything unsold. But she never stopped. She could not stop. She became known in the market, not for wealth or beauty, but for endurance. Other women admired her. Some pitied her. Some gossiped behind her back. "That widow is suffering too much," they would whisper. "She should have remarried by now. At least a new husband would help her." But Agnes refused to consider remarriage. Her heart belonged to her late husband. Her life now belonged to her daughters. As the years passed, Ada and Amara grew into hardworking young girls. They were identical twins with matching smiles, but their personalities were different in the most beautiful ways. Ada was gentle, thoughtful, and soft-spoken. Amara was a fireball, bold, outspoken, and fearless. Both had brains sharper than a razor blade. They attended a nearby public school, walking long distances in torn sandals. Some mornings they didn't eat before leaving home, but they never complained. They understood the weight their mother carried. They knew that every tired breath she took was for them. They studied at night using a small kerosene lamp that filled their tiny room with smoke. Sometimes their mother stayed awake pretending to sew, so they wouldn't feel guilty for keeping the light on. But the truth was, she stayed awake to protect them, to watch them breathe, to reassure herself that she still had them. Their teachers loved them. "Your girls are exceptional," their headmistress once told Agnes, placing her hand gently on her shoulder. "They are destined for greatness." Agnes smiled, but tears stung her eyes. "If destiny is real," she whispered to herself, "let it remember us." The struggle intensifies. Feeding two growing girls was not easy. School levies increased every term, uniforms needed replacing. Textbooks became more expensive. There were times Agnes cooked watery soup just so the girls could drink something warm before sleeping. When tomatoes became too expensive to buy in bulk, she switched to selling firewood. When firewood stopped bringing profit, she washed clothes for people in the neighborhood. She became known as the widow who could do anything, endure anything, survive anything. But inside her, she was breaking. Sometimes at night, when the twins were sleeping, she cried silently, hugging herself in the darkness. She missed her husband terribly. She missed having someone to help her carry the burden, but she refused to let her pain drown her. She would wake up the next day, wash her face, tie her scarf, and step into the world with renewed strength. "My daughters must not suffer my fate," she always said. Then came the day that changed everything. The twins returned from school holding brown envelopes with government stamps. Their faces were glowing, excitement pouring from their eyes like sunlight. "Mommy, Mommy," they called from the gate. "We have something to tell you." Agnes dropped the basin of water she was carrying. "What is it? What happened?" Amara rushed forward, waving her envelope. "We got admission." "Both of us," Ada added with a trembling smile. "Same university, same department, law." Agnes froze. For a long moment she couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Then her legs weakened, and she sat slowly on the ground, staring at the letters in disbelief. "My children, you made it," she whispered. The twins knelt beside her, hugging her tightly. "We did it for you, Mummy. Everything for you." Agnes cried not because she was sad, but because she had never felt such overwhelming joy and fear at the same time. She had always prayed for a breakthrough, but she never imagined it would come so beautifully. But after the joy came reality. The fees were terrifying: acceptance fees, tuition fees, hostel fees, law books, feeding allowance, transportation, laptops, registration charges. Agnes stayed awake all night, staring into the darkness. The numbers haunted her. The bills mocked her. Her heart raced with anxiety. "How will I do this?" she whispered. She had no savings, no property, no husband, no support system, nothing but two brilliant daughters with dreams too big for their poverty. The next day she went door to door, begging for help. Some people pitied her but offered nothing. Some laughed softly and shook their heads. Training one child in university is hard. Talk less of two. Some advised her to send only one to school. "Let one of them go," a neighbor suggested. "When she graduates, she will train the other." But Agnes refused. "God gave me twins," she said firmly. "I will not divide their future." Her late husband's relatives were the worst. "You want our brother's money to train girls?" Okafor mocked. "Girls that will soon marry and forget you?" Agnes walked away before her tears betrayed her. She had tried everything. Borrowed, begged, prayed, but nothing worked. Nothing except one thing. One decision that would change everything. The decision began like a whisper, soft, frightening, and painful. For days, Agnes walked around the house touching the walls, the windows, the old wooden doors her husband once repaired. Every corner held a memory. She remembered Chicky painting the children's room blue, even after everyone insisted girls should have pink. "They are my children," he had said. "They will choose who they want to be." Now the same room had cracks. The paint was fading. But it was still home. The only thing Chicky left behind that his greedy relatives couldn't steal, the same home where she became a wife, where she became a mother, where she buried her laughter after Chicky died, where she learned strength through tears, and now she was considering giving it up. The night of decision. The twins had gone to bed, exhausted from a day of celebration mixed with worry. Admission into university was a dream come true, but they knew their mother didn't have the money. Agnes sat alone in the living room, the only room that still had a dim bulb connected to a faulty wire. She spread the admission letters before her, reading the lines again and again. "Congratulations. You have been offered admission." The words stabbed her heart with equal parts pride and fear. She looked around at the empty shelves where books once stood, the corners where Chike's tools once lay, the wardrobe her in-laws had emptied like thieves. She remembered the humiliation, the insults, the shame, and the silent vow she made. "My daughters will rise. They will never beg from those wicked men. They will never bow to anyone." Tears filled her eyes as she whispered to the night, "Lord, show me the way." Her gaze landed on the front door. Old but sturdy, the first thing Chike ever bought after their marriage. The house was her last inheritance, her last safety, her last piece of her husband. But it was also the only thing she could sell. The thought strangled her chest. Sell the house? Where will we live? How will I start again? How will I survive? Her heart screamed no, but her mother's spirit whispered yes. Because mothers, no matter how broken, always find a way to give their children wings. Agnes sobbed silently into her palms. Her tears fell onto the admission letters. Wetting the ink, the girls deserved this. They had worked day and night. God had given them the chance. She only needed to open the door. At exactly 3:11 a.m., Agnes wiped her face, looked at the ceiling, and said with trembling lips, "For my daughters, even my blood is not too much to give." The decision had been made. The process begins. The next morning, she went to a local land agent named Mr. Ocourier. He was shocked when she told him she wanted to sell her home. "Madam Agnes, are you sure this house is your only property?" "I am sure," she said, her voice shaking but firm. He studied her face and saw the desperation. "I will find a buyer," he promised gently, "but please think well." "I have thought enough," she replied. "A home is not the walls. It is my children. If they rise, I will rise." Within a week, buyers began coming. Some inspected the house quietly. Some undervalued it. One man mocked it, saying, "This house is too old. I'm doing you a favor by offering this price." Agnes swallowed her pride even when the offers were low. She didn't have the luxury to negotiate. She needed the money immediately. Session was starting in 3 weeks. Finally, a young couple came, saw the house, and agreed to buy it. When Agnes signed the documents, her hand trembled so badly she could hardly write her name. As she collected the money bundled in brown envelopes, she felt like her heart was being ripped out of her body. This house was her past, but her daughters were her future. When the twins returned from running errands, they found their mother sitting outside, her eyes swollen, her hands trembling. "Mommy, what happened?" Ada rushed toward her. Agnes took a deep breath. "My daughters, I have sold the house." The silence that followed was heavy. Amara dropped the bag she was holding. "Mummy, no, not the house." Tears rolled freely down Agnes's cheeks. "I had to," she whispered. "You need to go to school. You need to become lawyers. The world took everything from me, but I refuse to let it take your future." The girls cried uncontrollably. Ada knelt, holding her mother's hands. "Mummy, we didn't ask for this." "You shouldn't suffer this much," Amara added, beating her chest in tears. Agnes touched their faces gently. A mother is not measured by what she keeps, but by what she gives. She pulled them into her arms, holding them like fragile miracles. Your father would want this. He always said you were born for greatness. Moving out. The buyer gave them only 3 days to move out. Those 3 days were torture. They packed their clothes into nylon bags because they didn't have suitcases. The twins folded their primary and secondary school certificates with care. They took the small pot and single frying pan the in-laws didn't bother to steal. Every corner of the house echoed with memories as they carried the final load outside. Agnes walked into her bedroom for the last time. She touched the wall where Chike once hung their wedding photo. She touched the window where sunlight used to fall on her face every morning. She pressed her forehead gently against the doorframe. "Thank you," she whispered to the house. "You sheltered us, now let us go." Then she walked out and didn't look back. They moved into a tiny one-room apartment behind the market. Dark, damp, with cracked floors and a leaking roof. There was barely space for 3 people to stretch their legs. But to the twins, it was a temporary sacrifice. To Agnes, it was a reminder of how much she loved them. The twins leave for university. With the house money she paid, acceptance fees, tuition, hostel fees, law textbooks, a second-hand laptop, each transportation, feeding allowance. As she watched her daughters board the bus to university, Agnes's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of hope. "Go, my angels," she whispered. "Go and become the women God destined you to be." She stood there long after the bus left, holding her wrapper tightly around her trembling shoulders. She was homeless in all but name, but her daughters were on the path to becoming lawyers, and that was worth every sacrifice. The morning started like any other, simple, quiet, and heavy with the routine struggles of a poor widow. Agnes woke up in her tiny one-room apartment behind the market, the sunlight leaking through the torn curtain like shy hope. She tied her wrapper, washed her face with cold water, and prepared to go to the market to buy tomatoes. She hummed softly, a habit she had developed to silence the emptiness of the room. She missed her daughters terribly. It had been months since she last saw them. As they were completing law school and preparing for the bar ceremony, she didn't have transport money to attend, but the twins insisted they would video call her. She watched the screen with trembling lips as both Ada and Amara, dressed in their law school gowns, lifted their certificates and said, "Mummy, your sacrifice wasn't in vain." She cried all night after that, but nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared her for what would happen next. The sound of destiny approaching. Around 10 a.m., as Agnes balanced her basket of tomatoes on her head and stepped outside, she heard something unusual, a series of loud car horns echoing from the end of the street. At first, she ignored it. Cars rarely passed through that narrow, dusty road. But the sound grew louder, sharper, stronger. Neighbors began peeking out of their doors, murmuring in confusion, "Who get convoy for this place? Is there a politician visiting? This road, it must be mistake." Agnes turned, shielding her eyes from the sun as she watched in disbelief. A convoy of shining black SUVs rolled into the street like royalty returning from war. The cars gleamed under the sunlight. Tinted windows, polished bodies, engines humming like rich men's whispers. The entire neighborhood froze, watching the impossible unfold. Then the convoy came to a slow, graceful stop. Right in front of Agnes's tiny room, her basket of tomatoes slipped from her hands and crashed to the ground. "Mummy," a soft, familiar voice called. Agnes gasped. Her heart skipped. Her breath caught. Her lips trembled. The car door opened, and out stepped her daughters. The glorious return. Ada and Amara emerged like queens, dressed in black and white lawyers' robes, their wigs perfectly styled, their shoes shining, their shoulders straight and proud. They looked like the very definition of success. The entire street went silent. Then whispers exploded like thunder. "Are these not Agnes's twin girls? See how fine they are. Lawyers, ha! God is wonderful. Is this not the woman that used to hawk tomatoes before? Her suffering has ended." The twins ran toward their mother. "Mummy!" Agnes felt her body weaken. She dropped to her knees in overwhelming emotion. "My daughters, my babies, my angels." They knelt with her, hugging her so tight they could feel each other's hearts. "Mummy, stand up," Ada whispered through tears. "You're not meant to kneel again." Amar added. Your suffering ends today. The neighbors clapped. Some cried. Some covered their mouths in disbelief. The twins lifted their mother gently and led her toward the convoy. Mummy, Ada said, wiping her mother's tears, we came to take you home. Home? Agnes repeated, confused. Amara smiled. Yes, Mummy, your new home. They drove through town, past wealthy estates and long boulevards lined with flowers. Agnes stared in shock, holding her daughter's hands like she feared vanishing into thin air. Finally, the convoy entered a massive gated estate. The guards saluted. The gates opened automatically, revealing a breathtaking white mansion with tall pillars, glass balconies, and a large fountain dancing in the middle. Mummy, Amara whispered, this house belongs to you. Agnes couldn't speak. She stepped out of the car slowly as if afraid the ground would disappear. The mansion stood tall like a dream carved from heaven. Mine, she whispered. You bought this for me? Ada held her mother's hands. You sold your house to send us to school. Now we're giving you something better. Something worthy of your sacrifice. Agnes broke down in tears. Loud, grateful, overwhelming tears. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. My shame is over. My tears have ended. The twins hugged her again, and this time the entire estate seemed to glow with their joy. Inside the mansion, the interior was even more beautiful. A chandelier that sparkled like diamonds, sofas imported from Italy, a kitchen that looked like a palace, a large bedroom with a king-size bed, a walk-in closet filled with new clothes, a private bathroom with hot water and marble floors. Agnes touched everything with trembling fingers. You mean I will sleep here? Me? Agnes, a woman they called useless. Ada smiled. They lied, Mummy. You are priceless. Amara held her mother's shoulders, and now the world will see it. The vow of justice. That evening, after the celebration, the twins guided their mother to the balcony overlooking the estate. The sky was painted in orange and purple, the colors of victory. They knelt before her again. Mummy, Ada began softly, we did not forget what your husband's relatives did to you. We did not forget the humiliation, Amar added. We did not forget what they stole. We did not forget how they mocked you because you had girl children. Agnes swallowed hard. My children, let the past go. No, Mummy, Ada interrupted gently. This is not revenge. This is justice, Amar's voice hardened with fire. We are lawyers now. We are strong now, and we will fight for our family. Agnes stared at them, not as the babies she once carried, but as the fierce, brilliant women they had become. Ada took her mother's hand. Mummy, we promise you, we will get back everything they stole. Amara nodded firmly. We will reclaim the land, the tools, the assets, everything our father worked for. Those wicked uncles will face the law. We swear it. Agnes covered her mouth, tears streaming. My daughters, may God guide your steps. They hugged her tightly, the three of them wrapped in a circle of love, victory, and destiny. Under the quiet glow of the evening sky, the twins repeated their vow. We will get back everything they took as long as we breathe. Justice will come. And with that vow, the story ended, not in silence, but in strength. A mother's sacrifice had birthed warriors, and justice was coming. Moral of this story: sacrifice never goes unrewarded. A mother's love can build empires even from nothing, and no amount of wickedness can stop the destiny of children raised with courage, discipline, and prayer. In the end, justice may delay, but it never denies. I hope you enjoyed this emotional journey of sacrifice, resilience, and destiny. But now the real question begins. Do you think these two brilliant young lawyers will truly get justice? Will they recover everything their mother lost? Or will their wicked uncles fight back? Would you love to see part 2 of this story? If yes, kindly comment, like, share, and subscribe to this channel so you'll never miss what happens next. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.